But yeah, I think I've been thinking a lot about libido. I think it's a really good idea. In fact, I would maybe include that in that list of key Jungian ideas because
Throw it down.
Sigmund Freud takes up this idea of libido, right, and he connects it to sexual drive, and then Carl Jung
Hmm.
expands it beyond sex into just psychic energy in general. You know,
Hmm.
libido is that kind of that the momentum and the fuel that you have to activate your psyche in the service of something.
Yeah.
And I really think that like maybe one of the best forms of personal development is working out how to optimize these systems within your own psyche for
Hmm.
generating libido and flowing it into stuff. Because I think it's very hard. It's very hard to outcompete someone who's like genuinely passionate about something. Um,
Yeah.
you know.
There's a beautiful tie with like tantric traditions in
Mm,
that.
mhm.
Not necessarily unified language, but they're like it's pretty similar, and it's
Yes,
cool that
yes, yes.
the Western psychology takes it from this very psychological component, and then the in the East you have the body connection, the energetic symbolic connection. And have you done I think you told me that you were doing some kind of tantric practices at some point. And were
I've done a
you?
bit of tantric stuff, yeah. I've
Yeah.
dabbled.
Um,
I've done some Kundalini stuff, and I've done some, um, yeah, masculine, feminine, inner energy, synergy, sex stuff.
yeah.
Yeah.
Have you done sexual energy cultivation?
Is that distinct from semen retention, or is that
I
would
think
that be
it's
within?
I think it like semen retention is a part of it. I'm using this bucket term. I'm
Yeah.
not sure which
So
one encapsulates the other, but it
I
also
got really into
involves
I got
yeah.
really into Kundalini for about 2 months, and so I was doing
Hmm.
a lot of semen retention then, and then I was trying to like mindfully get in. I was also getting into like chakras at the same time, and I was trying to like mindfully connect to my sexual energy and feel it like grow as I retain semen. And then I
Hmm.
tried to like pull it into my root chakra and then like send it up the spine and do
Yes.
all that sort of stuff. Yeah,
Yes.
it's great. It's good shit.
Yeah, that kind of thing. Like that's it's been really so much has changed over the 3 weeks that I've been here with Michelle. But I think that's been one of the powerful things has been
Yeah.
sexual energy cultivation and feeling actually starting to feel like energetic movements within my body, um, which is cool. I have some philosophy budding around the subtle states as well. If you want to go
hmm
into it,
Um, yeah, I do want to go into it. I wanted to reference an Old Testament story, but I think
yeah,
maybe your line of
great
inquiry is
time
maybe
for
more
it.
interesting. Okay,
Well,
okay.
you go
Well,
into
yeah,
that
it's just
first.
I just had this thought the other day, and it's about that. You know the story of Samson and Delilah.
Yeah,
So Samson has this like long hair, which is the source of his strength. And like
yeah.
he falls in love with Delilah and she like wants to cut his hair. And he's like, no, I can't cut my hair. And they keep going back and forth for like weeks. And then he kind of finally gives in and lets her cut his hair. And then he's like deprived of
Mm.
his strength or whatever. I just wonder whether this is like like an old, a kind of euphemistic story about semen retention.
Mm.
Because I do notice it. Like if I haven't ejaculated in like a week, I do feel like, and maybe it is just like sexual frustration, but even the sexual frustration can be diverted and repurposed into like a kind of driving force. I do feel the
Yeah,
difference. And I feel like depleted if I just have a ejaculatory binge, is
yeah,
maybe the
yeah,
technical language.
yeah.
I really do feel depleted. And so there is something to it. I don't think it's
There's
necessary to
something
like
to
keep
it.
yourself at 100% all the time, but I think it is actually good to not fall below like 20%. You should, I mean,
Hmm.
I think it's fine to like, you can ejaculate from time to time. And you should be able to live a lifestyle where you can kind of ejaculate whatever you want to without, um, falling into the habit of getting yourself down to near empty. Because then it changes. It does change your psychological state and your energy and your kind of even just like your mood and stuff. I do feel more
It really
um
does. It really does.
more I don't know what the word is. Erotic is maybe the
Yeah,
word when I'm
yeah.
full.
Uh, yeah, my experience with it recently. So I ejaculated for the first time yesterday in like nearly 3 weeks when we were doing intentional like sexual energy cultivation work and doing some like movement practices designed to get these energy systems flowing and such. And during that period, I noticed this increasing magnetism that they all talk about. And now that could be placebo. It could be asflorialized. It could be created through knowledge that that's like what I'm trying to create here, and then it kind of exudes out of me. But I kind of think it's legit. I kind of really think that like um, I'm growing more comfortable with the amorphous belief, or yeah, the amorphous belief that we do have these energetic systems in our body that interact with energetic systems in other people,
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
that we're right, that we're gaining information not just through the senses that we're consciously aware of, but through subtle systems that are instinctually programmed, and that they can interact with beauty where they see it. And as we cultivate sexual energy, for example, then we cultivate that sense of beauty or power or draw or magnetism, whatever, inside of us. And then people don't know why. It's not because my facial features have changed. It's not because I've like started to fit the dimensions of like our current paradigm of aesthetic beauty, but something in the subtle system is piquing their interest and be like, oh, that's like just enough of a draw to incline my head that way.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
enough
yeah.
of a draw for like a dog to follow me down the beach for a while.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Like, yeah, I mean, I think there's tons to be said for the fact that what people are attracted to, whether it's sexually or in terms of a business partner or a politician that they either trust or distrust or whatever. So
Hmm.
much of that is unconscious. Is not even just in body language, but is I think it's really derived from like introverted intuition. You're seeing loads and loads of data points, instances of someone behaving in body language or instances of someone behaving in terms of choices, how they move, what that implies about their values. And just kind of
Yeah.
unconsciously, you're constructing an introverted intuition model of who this person is. And some people
Hmm.
move and act and behave and show up in a way that makes you go, sure,
Yeah.
that's a person. I wish them the best of luck. And other people appear in a way that makes you go, holy fuck, can I be closer to this person? This person seems like they're
Yeah.
really tapped into something and I want it. And a lot of that goes beyond physical appearance, but it's cool. There's
Yeah.
magic in the air. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, so that's actually a really good branching point into these thoughts that are forming in me recently. That started at the beginning of this year and have been really growing. I can't remember if I already gave you the seed of these, and I think that I did, but I'll briefly review them.
Yeah.
The
Give me
the
your seed
original.
again.
I'll give you my seed. The seed is that potentially at the so we're you and I are engaging with one another in three-dimensional space, and we're aware of, um, we've got sight and sound. If you were close enough, I would be able to smell you, and all of these things that our little brain computer can like algorithmize and understand through those senses what's the extroverted intuition quality of this moment, what's the extroverted feeling quality of this moment, what's and basically all the extroverted functions I can like take in from you, and then and understand like kind of where we're operating together, right? That all exists, that's well understood. The cognitive function language hasn't necessarily been applied to that before, but I think it's a good enough association, right? And then we've got our like introverted systems that are telling me like what's going on in me. What have I got? What's arising out of who I consider myself to be, um, my ego rather. And so there's that. There's that. Now, suppose there were other data points and other senses, other things, other ways that we can interact with one another that aren't these really obvious ones. They aren't these really obvious ones that I can like directly tune into, like vision and hearing and these. Those are so obvious. Like from the moment that we're born, we're like accosted by these senses, and they just like take up so much of our awareness that I think we spend like a good portion of those early years patterning them to figure out what they mean. And that patterning process goes decently well. It takes some time, but then we figure out like how to distinguish different objects, and we figure out it, like in our visual field, and distinguish objects from self, what the limits of my own skin. Um, we figure out how to associate something in the visual field with something that we're hearing. And we also learn to pattern our own body and our body's movements. We start from like wobbling around, little impulses are firing in the nervous system that we're like just dimly aware of, and then suddenly there's like a flash of like beige in front of the face. And it's like, whoa, that's so interesting. What is that? And then more, amorphacy of movement and wobbling. We see that flash again, and it's the flash of the infant's
Breath.
arm or a breast. But but right now I'm after something that like the infant can potentially consciously control, but doesn't yet have the
Oh,
patterning for,
right.
doesn't
Yeah,
yet
gotcha.
know how to move an arm, doesn't know what an arm is. But after enough of those flashes and recognizing that there was a subtle impulse inside that was concurrent with that flash,
Mm.
realizes like, oh, I have this power. I have this power of
Mm.
movement, and then we grow and we make it more fine, and then we take on martial arts, and then we become like masters of the body and all of that. And all of it goes through this mechanism of patterning. This subtle sense inside um, needs to be patterned with what occurs outside. I need to be able to pattern it with the extroverted world, right? Or in Ken Wilber's like quadrant language, we kind of really exist in the upper left quadrant of like personal experience, and then we have to correlate that with the right hand quadrants of like, this is what's happening in physical space. These are the dynamics occurring when this thing occurs inside of me. So patterning is important. Just generally, just patterning is how we grow and accustom to our senses. So let's say there are some other senses. If we've got a few more of them, they could be coming in data streams all the time. They could be coming in from the environment. They could be coming in from disembodied spirits. They could be coming in from each other. But it's not patterned. It's not patterned information. It just comes in as noise. It just comes in as noise in the system. We don't know what to do with it. So the seed of the thought came around this idea of like, if you're face to face with somebody and you're having like a pretty casual kind of small talk interaction, it doesn't cut too deep. It's like, yeah, information's being passed out here, and then probably I'm getting like this data stream in the subtle realm, but we're not going deep enough in the physical for me to understand how to correlate that subtle data stream with what's truly going on inside of that person. And let's just suppose for the moment that subtle stream is somehow like true, like it's real data, it's a real felt sense of what's going on in them. So compare that side to side with something like an authentic interaction, a deep interaction, one that really cuts into it, one where you actually get a sense through the things that you mentioned, like body language, through eye contact, through tone of voice, through the words chosen. You get a sense from those of what the person's actually feeling, what's actually going on in them, at the same time as you're receiving a data stream of direct information that communicates that same thing. So in that authentic, deep, that deep dive cutting interaction, then you can start to pattern that data for that person. You can start to pattern that data to understand what's going on in them. Originally, I was trying to figure out like, why do some people who I've had these kind of deep cut interactions with have like appropriate dreams about me at some time, and sometimes, and especially in states of openness, where we're both open. And then, yeah, what was I forget what we were just talking about, because that was all the setup. And now I wanted to go into something like more relevant to what we were directly
Yeah, man. I,
discussing, but
I,
I kind
I,
of
I have
lost
that
it.
problem sometimes as well. I'm like, oh, I've got a really good idea.
Yeah,
In order to explain it,
yeah,
I need to first set the scene. But then setting the scene requires so much labor that it's like, yeah, fuck.
yeah.
Um,
Do you remember what we were talking about before Samson?
well, we were talking about semen
Somebody put it
retention,
in the
right?
comments. The semen retention. Um, okay.
We were maybe talking
Maybe it
about that
was,
because of something.
yeah, okay. I think I can riff, and then maybe it'll start to
Go
collect.
for it. Yeah.
So for example, during the those subtle systems are active, and I think they're maybe they're archetypally bound, they're instinctual in some kind of way. So there's certain amount of information that we'll just resonate with, something deep in us we'll just resonate with. We'll know how to pattern. We'll know which archetypes they're triggering. And then so as I'm walking down the beach, having done my sexual energy cultivation, and I seem to just be like attracting more attention and good vibes than I usually am. I don't think it's just physical attributes. I don't think it's just
Yeah,
the
yeah,
swing
yeah.
of my hips.
You're
I
putting out a
think that
different sense data somehow, and
no,
so through some
yeah,
other. Yeah, yeah,
yeah. There's another sense data that we're connected with, and that could
yeah, yeah.
actually be. We might even find that um, in the cognitive functions. There's like there's a sense or feeling or something, quality that's being received subtly that
Well,
they don't tell me.
I think like I've been trying to take this thing off, and that's a
Then you're
very
making art
unorthodox.
instead.
Yeah, yeah, exactly
Yeah.
right. It's literally like, oh, it's broken now. There was a moment there where it's beautiful. I mean, it's like this is it's a very strange shape.
It's wearing a
Oh
bikini.
fuck. I've actually forgotten now, but it is wearing a bikini. You're right. Yes, I've bikinified my. Do you know why the bikini was called the bikini? Do you know why they named it the bikini?
Bikini Atoll because it was
Yeah,
super nuclear.
yeah, exactly. It was like this shit's gonna fucking rock the world. Let's call it. Let's name it after where they did nuclear tests, and they weren't wrong. It was quite the invention.
They weren't wrong. Yeah. The
Oh
two
yeah.
piece.
Yeah, you were saying they
I'm
might be
saying
putting out
subtle
different
senses.
sense data
You seem
that
to
potentially.
respond to like there might be a correlate in the cognitive functions.
No, fuck, it's gone. It has gone. But again, perhaps I could just rev it on this, and then my unconscious will furnish something of use
Yeah.
to say. But yeah, that's what it was. That's what it was. I think.
Mars, can you give me just a second?
Go
I
for
have
it.
to justify my stay. I'm gonna mute myself for a second.
All right, sick. Okay. Are you justified?
I guess so.
All right. Okay. So, one of the reasons that the Marxist economic system was so ineffective, or I should say the Leninist system, the Soviet system, or whatever, is because it was like this top-down system where they tried to like set the prices for everything and assign different workers to different places. It was like
Hmm.
it was like really inefficient and like robotic and crap. Whereas the free market system is a decentralized form of calculation, right? It's like a more advanced form of calculation. It's like a more advanced computer, because it's decentralized. It's everything
Hmm.
can respond to everything else. The system's more efficient. The system flows better. It can adapt to different situations. I think the human body and the human psyche is like that in some way, right? Where if you got everything flowing properly, if your libido is flowing through all your different parts, if your cognitive functions are speaking to each other well, and they're not at war with each other, but they're synergizing, I think it doesn't just generate a greater wholeness and synergy and emergence or whatever within your psyche. It also that emergence, that wholeness is visible to others, I think. You are perceived by others as like a more complete system that is more in sync with itself, that is working better. And so
Hmm.
I think whenever like yeah, like whenever we have our shit together better, whenever we have a better relationship to ourselves, whenever perhaps we do have more sexual energy flowing through our system, it is actually discernible by others. You can see it. You can see the output. You can see in the same way as one nation has a higher GDP than others or whatever. People can kind of
Mm.
intuit like, oh, this person. They're easier to talk to, right? They're because they're more present, they're more charismatic, they're more playful, whatever. They have all these higher capacities that I think are downstream of your system actually working more efficiently together, more in synergy with everything else. Whereas sometimes whenever you
Hmm.
meet someone and you get a bad vibe from them, it's because they are actually forcing a lot of stuff. They're like, oh, it's important for me to come across like this, so I'm going to come across like this, and this message comes from the top down, and it's not respecting the will of the individual parts, and it's just
Hmm.
enforced on the system, and then they're janky and
Yeah.
robotic and stuff, and people intuit that
Yeah.
as like, oh, this person's got a weird vibe. So I think maybe that's part
Yeah.
of how we communicate this sort of stuff to people.
No, I think for sure because like that's the thing is so this patterning and this tuning to information, it happens internally as well in the project I'm describing, where our different parts come to us with information that may or may not be patterned. We may or may not be willing to listen to that. Yeah, we may be more or less prepared to do that patterning based off of what information we're willing to accept, right? We'll leave these parts of ourselves, like in the internal family systems kind of model, these exiles. We'll leave them off to the side because we don't want to. They're the outrageous child that's going to like blow things up if we give it any control over the system. So we just like leave it off to the side. We never discover all the information that's there, that's patterned. So that information comes to us anyway. It disrupts our systems, and it comes out to other people, both in that subtle realm and by like weird actions that we're not conscious of why we're making.
Right.
And we know that we're amazing at rationalizing
Yes.
what we're doing. And then so like those systems will start to interact with the other person. And then if we care to reflect on it, but not deeply enough, then we'll think that like, oh, that's my that well, anyway, it's my higher systems, my ego structures way of doing things. I must have been threatened. He must have been threatening me. Like I feel like this person was imposing undue limitations on me, which is why I responded that way. And it's like, no, there were some different options there, but like some part of yourself which you're not allowed to talk to got triggered.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Or even if that part of you didn't get triggered, perhaps in order for that part not to get triggered, you had to create this really complex system of coping mechanisms in order to avoid ever having to go to that part of yourself, and therefore you've created this really like artificial, abnormal structure to yourself that other people are like, why is he behaving like that? Why, whenever I asked him this question, did he respond in this way? That's such an unnatural, weird way to respond, and you've managed maybe to hide that thing that you were untrusting of yourself, but you haven't been able to hide all the compensations that you built around it.
Yeah. Well, so I don't have it laced together what exactly the tie is here, but can I tell you a dream I had last week or the week before? In the dream, from the moment I was aware, I was in the living room of like this Southern manor. That's kind of like Southern heritage, like kind of manor in autumn with a big family. And so you can think almost like Home Alone before he's alone.
Yes, I know what you mean. I was thinking of Django Unchained, but I know what you mean. Yeah.
Okay. So Home Alone, big, big family, and I was adopted. I knew that I was adopted, and this was my first time encountering my family.
Wow.
And these were my family, and I was enjoying. I was in flow. I was getting to know my siblings. Like most of them were younger than me. I'd never met mom in the dream, but I have this sense that her presence was there and she was engaged in interacting. And in those early moments of the dream, all of my siblings were receiving these little booklets. And I knew in the booklet was like a story and a script. So they were receiving these from the father figure. And I didn't get one. I wasn't given one. And the father, he's left, and I decided I'm going to go confront him. And I start going out the door because he's outside. I start going out the door, and a young boy, so a young brother of mine, he comes in and he's crying. The family is now outside and they're playing in the front yard. They're playing they're just having a jolly old time. And this boy leaves there and he comes in, he meets me at the door and he's crying. And I collapse and just like hold him and cry with him. Feeling whatever it was, and it might have been like, kind of involved with this story. It might have been this feeling of being rejected, or feeling isolated, or feeling like not part of what was going on. And so I'm on my way to like reclaim like my right to be in this family, or like recognition of being in this family or something. And so after the crying event, there were no words or dialogue spoken there. And then I find Father, who is classic like 90s film, detached, business focused, like dad who's like often corporate space or whatever, doing
Yeah.
whatever
The
project
dad
that
and
he thinks
Elf.
is the dad in Elf. Yes, I met Elf Dad.
Yeah.
Yeah, but maybe, but like, so a dad. I got the sense that he was zesty about life, but not about family life.
Mm.
You know.
Mm. Okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so I find him. He's sitting. He's reclined in the in the driver's seat of his like black car. Maybe he has his like feet up on the board, and he has his headphones in, talking to somebody. And then so I go over to the window, and I indicate to him, and I say, "This," and I point to both of us. "This is important." And he like was surprised, like acknowledges me, like, "Oh, yeah, oh, okay." And it seems like he's going to enter into the conversation and go and get the script and or give me the thing and whatever. But he leaves the car, and he starts walking down the driveway away from the house, and I follow him. And on my right, the whole family is playing, and they've got like balls and hoops and nets, and they're having like a real good old time out there in the front yard. And then father like goes off to the left, and it looks like he gets into a bed, like into a big king size bed that's just out there in the side yard. And I approach this bed, and it's not a bed. It's a mound, kind of like a compost heap. And father isn't there, but there's this hole with like a wooden grate kind of covering it into the earth, into this compost heap. And grandfather or another ancestor of the line is in there. He's in there in the compost heap. And I talked to him, and the,
The grandfather
the the grandfather, yeah.
of the ancestors. Yeah. Well.
Yeah. And I have this impression that he stays here. This is his kind of like final place. He's here, and he's observing the family and like participating through observation. People can come to him when they want, but he rests here in the earth. And I ask him, like, don't you get cold here? Because I know it's like early autumn. It's not even winter yet. It's gonna get real cold then. And he answers, or I get the impression that he's warmed by the earth. And I think that was the end of that dream.
Wow. Wow. That's a crazy dream. That's
This
so like
crazy
archetypal.
dream. Yeah. Yeah. Generations of family, script, play. Um, and it fit really well with themes that Michelle and I were exploring, both in our kind of like process and our shadow work, as well as in our expansion. So a lot seemed to come to head in that. But the crazy thing, and I hope I'm not giving away too much information from Michelle's side, but I'll ask him later if we decide to publish this. But is that when we spoke about it, it had much more resonance with what he was going through, and some of the things that he conveyed a lot of this material to me, so I could have like kind of like taken it on and then dreamt up this scenario, but it had a lot more resonance with what he was going through than what I was particularly going through. So he talked about this interaction between yeah, well, I've been in it too, but like the work and play, but especially having like um, a schematic, a plan of action, a role which was exemplified in the script. Hmm. Yeah.
Do you think that your unconscious processing new possibilities of theorizing reality that you hadn't considered before you had this conversation with him, and then planted ideas in your head, and you care about him and you're invested in him, so now you're invested in his struggles and his questions? Or do you think, like, are you doing it on his behalf in some sense? Or do you think it's awoken stuff in you that you're thinking about authentically for yourself?
So I get weird about it, but I'm playing in it. Like this doesn't enter like a realm of a solid belief or dogma, but the play with this is that all of these psychological components that were exemplified in the dream are available to me, are part of me and part of my process. Bueno, gracias. They're part of my process, but that the structure, the layout of the dream was in some way like Michelle's dream and Michelle's process. And Jung talks about in Memory Streams Reflections, he mentions one or two instances where he had someone else's dream. He's like, this isn't my process. This isn't my psychology that I'm working out right now, but particularly clients of his who they would have been deep into attunement to one another and in those subtle realms that we were just discussing in order to get enough attuned information to start engaging in that subtle level, which potentially doesn't get cut off when you close your eyes. Potentially, you continue receiving subtle information from people in close proximity,
Yeah,
from people
I think so.
from people at a distance who have somehow entered a similar psychic shape or vibration as what you're containing at that time, even though you're at a distance, you can still be a receiver of that kind of thing. So that's the realm where I'm playing with it. That I'm playing with there. We'd had so many attuned interactions that I was like understanding what process was going on in him, and then I was in a state of openness to be a receiver of some of the movements going on in him at that moment. And because they were relevant to me as well, and they were present inside of me, like I was a good conduit to like for that drama to play out in my dream.
Yeah, yeah. I think either of those are interesting candidates. Um, yeah, like
It's
I think there's
wacky though.
probably it is a bit wacky, but like so I'm generally very open to whenever I first started getting into this kind of woo woo adjacent stuff. I first kind of treated it as like metaphors. Like these are metaphors that
Yeah, same.
condense and compress information that would otherwise that could be maybe articulated in some kind of more scientific way, but that would take paragraphs or pages of logical explanation. Whereas if you just say
Yeah.
something like, it kind of works. Um, but the more I've kind of I guess the more I've studied, the more I'm convinced that like this kind of reductionist kind of syllogistic way of conceptualizing reality or trying to reduce reality down to propositional statements is not just like a kind of well, I think it's kind of just in some way like naive. It's some way kind of small-minded. I think there's something to be said for, the fact that like some like Aboriginal cultures or whatever will like look down on the white man as like naive and
Mm.
like out of touch. Because I think in some real sense it is, and does become a bit stupid to always try to be like, oh, wait a minute, everything's just a machine. What's the way? And then you can create some kind of way by which we can communicate with each other. And it seems like the more that we understand about the world, the more we're trending back towards some way of conceptualizing interpersonal interactions and human societies and stuff as part of some kind of larger emergent ident emergent entity, some kind of thing that can communicate within itself in ways that are maybe beyond just like language and visual sight, you know.
Yeah.
I don't know what that means, but I think that's like I'm increasingly convinced that that's just like a good assumption to make or a good heuristic to work from. Is like
Hmm.
probably there's some stuff that if you had to explain it to Isaac Newton, he'd be like, "That's magic." Maybe Isaac Newton's a bad example. He was actually a massive alchemist. But Richard Dawkins or whatever,
Oh,
they'd be
sure.
like,
You
that
don't
doesn't
have to
make
go
that.
too far with Richard Dawkins before it's out of his comfort zone.
Yes, 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 yeah. And so maybe
Yeah.
for that reason, he's a bad example as well. But there's probably some kind of archetypal scientist who is sufficiently open-minded, yet
Uh-huh.
sufficiently rational that he would be like, "Wow, that's magic! I can't explain it. It must be some supernatural." But it's like, I don't know. I don't know if supernatural is the right term. Maybe our
Mm.
conception of what is natural is just unnecessarily limited, and maybe like
Yeah.
the right way to conceptualize things is is to kind of assume that everything has this kind of organic magic to it, and then also assume
Mm.
that there will maybe be some more mechanistic explanation found for that later on down the line. If you want to cash it out in terms of like measurable data, that'll probably be possible by some yet to be discovered idea. And obviously, it's
Hmm.
that could give you a license to just believe any old bullshit. But hopefully, if you combine that with a rigorous grounding in actual science and a kind of decently well developed sense of judgment and perspective and stuff, hopefully you can kind of limit yourself from believing utter bullshit whilst fast tracking your ability to grasp like principles and things that probably are actually real in some way that we just can't
Hmm.
fully explain right now. And I think there's maybe like a courage and maybe a wisdom in being okay with just sitting with that.
Yeah.
Although
Yeah.
it incurs the risk of like that's the very thing that people do wrong is they will just be like, oh, I could just believe it, it's fine, I don't need an explanation. But in some sense, that's life, right? I like doing recreational drugs. I like snowboarding. I like driving motorcycles. All of these things have risks involved in them. And so the solution to the problem of risk is to pay attention and be skilled and prepare and be wise and be mature and do it properly. And not just, throw caution to the wind, but also not just stay inside your house and never go snowboarding or motorcycle riding because
Hmm.
then you don't get to experience those amazing activities. So um, I think anything worth doing in life maybe does require a certain amount of faith in some spirit of the activity or something in a way that isn't strictly
Yeah.
rational, and could it lead itself to abuse. But the trick is to not abuse it.
Mm. I'm gonna pull back on something that like piqued my interest just a little bit ago. And I think that you were talking about, yeah, potentially these other subtle realities that we have access to. They don't seem scientific, but like where we could grow in that, and we could. I forget your wording for it, but to me it sounded like we could share mind in some kind of way.
Uh-huh.
I have a question that this is leading to, but do you want to like refine what you might have been saying
No, I
if you
don't
can
want to define
recapture
it.
it?
Well, I was
Okay.
specifically trying to tiptoe around defining it in any kind of
No,
concrete
okay.
way.
Well, I can give my question anyway. Um, so that so suppose like, hey, well, it does kind of seem like my thoughts have led me to this point, and my observations of like what's going on, these weird dream occurrences, and the kind of information I'm getting off of people, and what I'm learning from the cognitive functions, which I think that we're doing proper development on, which is going to influence people's thinking on these matters. It seems to be pointing in a direction of um, us sharing more mind, not just sharing ourselves in three-dimensional space, but also sharing mind. And the weird correlation for me is that like there are a lot of channeled work that discuss that. People saying that they're. Are you familiar with this kind of thing? This scene, people
Channeling.
channeling.
I've heard,
Uh huh.
I've dabbled. I've done. I've been in some subreddits. Yeah,
Mm.
I'm familiar with the phenomenon, at least in
So,
theory.
yeah, so they aren't ones that I've engaged with directly myself. I just that stuff I still have in the bucket of like, oh, all of this is really symbolically useful. I don't know if it's I don't know about the reality of this. It's still there for me, but then the kind of stuff that they're saying is like, actually, if you align your life by those principles, and I think you'd live pretty well. So there's some wisdom to it. And one of the big themes that comes up is that there's this like consciousness is in this state of evolution, and it's happening in humans, and it has potentially happened in other beings in other places in the universe or whatever. The Pleiades, for example.
Okay, why the
And
Pleiades? What?
I don't. I just hear people saying that they're from the Pleiades,
Okay.
Dean beings
Oh,
who've
that
come
is.
down to Earth
I
or
think
whatever.
that's Starseeds. That is the Starseed
I
thing,
think that
isn't
might be the Starseed thing.
it?
Anyway,
Yeah, I
so
don't think there's any
it's all
evidence to think that the Pleiades are more likely to be in the birthplace of life than anywhere else. Maybe there is. I haven't seen it. I'm not
the
aware.
channeled works. The channeled works, mate. People talk to people who like if people talk to spirits who recognize that they're from the Pleiades. Yeah, yeah. So I'm still not there with these yet,
Sure,
but
sure.
it's interesting that like this independent line of reasoning that we're generally doing is starting to do work on this project that these channeled works have been talking about for like 50 years or whatever, of initiating the next big transformation of human consciousness, which is to bring us together into more of a like connected mind, a community mind. I forget the words that are used for this kind of thing, but I think it's different in different channeled works. Um, but yeah, this idea that like these are guides. They can only contact people who have like prepared themselves to be receivers of the information. So they contact them, they give them their message, and the message is that like we are beings. You are speaking to like this collective mind from who's like gone through so many evolutionary stages, or like we're your future selves in this kind of like interstellar kind of way,
Mm-hmm.
and then yeah, they're trying to guide us toward the wisdom of how to become this, how to prepare ourselves to become that collective mind as well. Is it bad mythology? Could it be a
I think
decent?
it is. No, I think
You think
it's.
it's bad mythology?
I think it's
Okay,
all projection. Yeah, I think it's all projection. I think it's
and in a way different from how mythology is.
in a way different to how mythology is. No, they only. Well, no. I think when we read mythology, we're kind of like, oh, here's myth. These are projections of people's unconscious, but it's really valuable because whoa, it's connection to the archetypes and stuff, right? And we can do
Yeah.
that with religion, and we can do that with myth. And it seems a little harder in some way to do that with mega recent stuff. That's a good question.
Hmm.
What is my bias here? Okay, here's my intuition on this. I think people have always been telling myths and always been creating religions, and most of them are shit and get forgotten by history. And some of them get preserved. And so when we're talking about Homer or something, that's like, oh my God, you know, this was written 2,500 years ago or something. And it's preserving stories that are maybe 4,000 years old. Like, wow, the fact that it stayed around is a testament to the
Hmm.
fact, or strongly implies that the archetypal stories in there are deep, accurate archetypal stories. Whereas when some like random person on the internet, is like, oh, I'm challenging this thing. I'm like, great. I assume that most of these people are just talking bullshit. And like, maybe you have got some kind of insight. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure what I'm saying. Maybe I've just articulated a bias. I've been a bit prejudiced about, but like, sure, it's worth listening to these people's stories. I think I've just read enough of these online hippies with their fucking hot takes about how everything works that I'm like, oh my God, all this is just crap. It's all just crap. Some of it
Yeah.
potentially is good and valuable, but there isn't
Yeah.
a qualification mechanism there to identify the good stuff. Whereas when we come to mythology and religion, we do have a kind of mechanism because some
Hmm.
religions and some myths have stuck around for 3,000 years, and that's worth something. But in
Yeah.
theory, somebody who thinks they're talking to an alien from the Pleiades could very well have stumbled upon something really fucking bang on.
Hmm.
I guess I
Yeah.
just think that maybe, yeah, I don't know. Maybe I just think that someone who has that kind of intellectual or spiritual capacity, um, would, I don't know, maybe I don't know, maybe just not be attracted to that sort of way of articulating things. It seems to me to lack sufficient grounding in the science and mythology that we do have. It seems to me that
Hmm.
they're just kind of off on their own. Yeah, some guy just lives in a house in Arizona, and he's got his hot takes in the world, and I don't know if I want to dedicate time to learning his hot take.
Yeah, I agree. I agree largely, but I don't think this just like some guy in Arizona giving hot takes. Some of these big ones, some of the big ones that people are into are were like projects that multiple like experience. There's like an experience in a professional channeling like world that they've undertaken sometimes together.
Could you give me an example? Can I
And
look up a website or something?
the one the one that I've heard, I've just watched one YouTube video of it. Is it's called the Law of One. The Law of One would be is I think is the big work that came out of it. Um, but yeah, let me briefly describe like what the beef I take with this, and then maybe where I think it's valuable. So
Okay.
I agree that this work needs to be unified with like the best wisdom that we have across the board, and we should look into depth psychology and assess where does us where to what extent could we be like a perfect blank slate channel for something out of the collective unconscious from another entity, blah blah blah? And where is our limitations? Like, how can we only transmit stuff that we're ready to be receivers for, thoughts that are just ready to emerge in our own mind? And then how would a bias about what our metaphysics is, how would that affect what we're channeling? For example, the you have Jung was channeling, right? He was channeling. He wasn't necessarily channeling disembodied entities in his own conception, but his whole Red Book was a channeling project
Yes, yes, yes.
of some type. But he was embedding it within his own framework of how things are, meeting archetypal energies, meeting parts of the self, and da 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 da.
Yes, yes, yes,
Um,
yes, yes.
so he was going about that, and then he formed it in his own words, and went on to do like so much good theory that's broadly applicable based off of that. And then you have artists who are, I think, legitimately channeling. They're tapping into some kind of source of inspiration or wisdom that's a little bit apersonal, that comes, yeah, that comes
Yeah,
through them but not out of them.
yeah. I would say it's coming through them from their unconscious, right? And so the value of the thing is limited by the value of that person's unconscious,
What do
which isn't
you?
necessarily to say anything negative. Like obviously the unconscious is deep, potentially infinitely valuable. Um, but I'm not a big fan of Islam, right? And Islam came out of Muhammad's unconscious, so I'd probably rather he had just left it where it was. Because I don't know, it's benefited the world. Maybe I don't know, but I don't know what the net contribution of Islam has been, and potentially the Enlightenment in Europe wouldn't have happened without Islam. But I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, just because someone's unconscious brings forth ideas that are profound to them doesn't mean they're of like genuine contribution to the species as a whole, and something can be locally advantageous without being globally,
Mm.
advantageous. So I looked up this website for the Law of One, and I was reminded of like the one primary thing that always kind of rubs me the wrong way about these things, which is
Yeah.
if they staked out a position that was purely mythological, like, hey, I'm channeling these ideas, archetypal, blah blah blah, I would be like, cool, feed it to me. What have we got? But instead, they always try to make it a bit too scientific, a bit too historical, a bit too
Mm-hmm.
believable by the scientific criteria that they shouldn't be trying to appeal to, right? So I've gone on the
Thoth
website.
came to the Thoth came and helped them build the pyramids, and nobody could
Right,
channel
right.
him for like 6,000 years, and now he's back because I can
Yes,
channel
exactly.
him.
Exactly, right. So that's what the Law of One is. It's not Thoth, but it's Ra, right? So apparently Ra is a sixth density social memory complex that formed on
Mm-hmm.
Venus about 2.6 billion years ago. They previously tried to spread this message in Egypt with mixed results. So it's like, why can't it just be an alien from the Pleiades? Why has it got to be an alien from Venus that tried to do something in Egypt, and now we're doing Egypt
Well,
2.0. We're back at it again. And it's like, why do you have to locate it within the Egyptian mythology? And it seems to
it's
me that the
coherent
instinct there.
within it's coherent within their paradigm where they're actually channeling that information. And you would say then that that's emerging from their unconscious, like, oh, I have this association with Venus, I have this association with Egypt, and so what the message that they're giving is that like I am this this thing
Yeah,
that's engaged in these energies, and then so at least they're being, I mean, it's consistent with the project that they're trying to do
yes, but
anyway.
that's what makes it like scream kind of like human creation. I feel like you know what I mean? Like it seems like it just seems
I do know what you mean.
yeah, it seems too shallow. It seems like someone is trying to locate this within something that already has a bit of cultural cachet so they can piggyback on the momentum and the clout that already exists around Egyptian mythology or Ra, whatever, and now we can go to the next step.
Yeah.
And it just seems a
Okay.
bit too Machiavellian maybe, or like marketing focused, or it too intent on being persuasive rather than intent on being authentic to whatever the true energy is. So that suggests to me that if it is coming from some kind of connection to the unconscious archetypes, it's not like as deep as it might be. It's not maybe as deep as Carl Jung's connection was.
Hmm.
Because I don't see him trying to do that sort of thing. Um, I mean, his fucking he had like some fucking random guy. Well, Elijah's not that random, I guess, but like, whatever. Some guy, some girl called Slomi or whatever that no one gives a fuck about.
Yeah. No,
Um,
I know. Yeah. Well, have you read some of the Red Book?
I've read some of it. Yeah,
It's
it's
a
cool.
brilliant listen, and it just most of it just washes over me, but every once in a while something really slaps. And I think that like because it's all just so deeply archetypal that it's my unconscious is having a really good time, even if I'm confused. Mm. Well, wait, can I press on a point?
Go for it. Go for
You said that this stuff is coming from their unconscious. What do you think is
it.
like the nature of the collective unconscious? Is it, do you believe in, okay, it's just like this instinctual base layer, it's kind of like genetically coded, or do you believe it's an actual information layer that we're tapped into that's kind of evolving and emerging?
Um, that's a good question. I'm not sure what I believe about that. My assumption, my home base is that it's an instinctual layer, that it is
Hmm.
a proto-conscious. What like consciousness emerged out of something. So it's
Yeah.
before there was consciousness, there was presumably some capacity to there was some kind of intelligence that precedes consciousness, right? AI, for example, seems to have some capacity for intelligence. I don't believe it's conscious. So it seems that intelligence is more fundamental than consciousness. And it seems that the unconscious has some kind of ability to do mathematics with symbols or whatever. There's some ability to connect symbols, to
Mm.
intelligently intuit meaning or construct meaning out of symbols. And I think that this is kind of fundamentally, well, I don't know about fundamentally, it is instantiated biologically, and it is like a personal unconscious. So the collective
Hmm.
nature is the fact that because of genetics and the fact we all have a shared history, genetic history, then we all have our own copy of this kind of hardware, this firmware rather. And so we're all running the same operating system, and the operating system is really deep and has all this intelligence built into it, and all this genetic history that goes back millions of years, which has a lot of wisdom encoded into it. As well as believing that, I also believe that the whole cosmos is in some way not just fundamentally material, and the actual foundation of the cosmos is at minimum the source out of which consciousness ultimately evolves. So it has the nature of proto consciousness somehow
Mm-hmm.
in the fabric of the cosmos itself, which is to say that that proto consciousness, or the capacity at minimum for consciousness, is actually a constituent property of the material of the cosmos itself. And so even something that is biological and just physical is by nature of being made of the physical of this cosmos, participates in this fucking divine essence of proto
Hmm.
consciousness, which is mad and fucking crazy. And so, the fact that our consciousness, whatever this is, can evolve out of material, means that I have a great amount of respect for the unconscious mind. Because even though I don't think it's conscious in the way that we are, it's still fucking magic in the way that the universe is, because the universe has given rise to this, right? So, yeah, I don't like to think that the collective unconscious is actually like a shared hive mind. I don't really think that's the case. I think we construct the hive mind through conversation, and maybe through this other form of sensory communication you were talking about earlier. But ultimately,
Mm.
the hive mind exists in this network of the nodes, but the nodes are foundational to the network. I don't think the nodes being us, are emergent out of
Mm.
an underlying conscious
Mm.
network.
Yeah, so it's something
Yeah.
like the conversations that we have and the media that we take in imbue the meme, the mimetic structure and the archetypal relationships between like information into us, which can then emerge in different individuals in totally different places as it's their personal unconscious which is taken in this information and then it's coming out in a new way. And so then would I find that really plausible. I find that like yeah, really worthwhile. And I can see, so I often go back to Jung's um dreams about the World War um that he had prior to the outbreak of violence. And like
That's interesting.
was he tapped in?
Well,
Was he like
there we go.
feeling the
So
future? Or tell
yeah.
me.
So what I just stated is kind of my starting position, and that's kind of my home base, and that's kind of where I'm tethered to.
Hmm.
But once I'm nice and tethered, I'm very happy to spacewalk out into the unknown and see
Yeah,
where we can
yeah,
go.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And yes, stuff like that is very interesting. I don't know, maybe perhaps there's another layer on top or something whereby it is possible to intuit into other people's minds or intuit into. I mean, I don't know. Like Isaac Asimov wrote this series called Foundation, in which a guy who was just really good at logic was able to tell the future because he was able to factor in all of the data points and all of where everything was going in the same way as a trader might study the stock market and see, oh, look at this, everything's converging,
Hmm.
there's going to be price action, it's probably going to, and you can make your bets, right? He kind of did this for like his character in the story Foundation did this for like all the factors in the whole society, and he could basically tell that, oh shit, this empire is in a state of it looks like it's really healthy at the moment, but in 400 years, it's going to begin to collapse. In 1,000 years, it's going to be erased. And so we need to preserve our culture now while we still have a
Hmm.
chance by building like a kind of Wikipedia planet where we can store all of our knowledge of our culture. Um, and I think that's kind of plausible. I don't see any kind of real physical limitations on why it wouldn't be true to predict the or it wouldn't be possible to predict the trajectory of things that are happening because we do that. We do that, right? Like whenever Trump invaded Iran, a lot of people were like, "Oh, this is going to go really bad because Iran's going to fucking shut the Hormuz Strait, and that's going to wreck the global economy, and that's going to put pressure on Trump." And blah. And like lots of people saw that, and now a month later, Trump's finally realized it, and he's like shitting himself or whatever. Like it is possible to do these things, and like I said, like traders and entrepreneurs and stuff, they do make their living off telling the future, and so maybe there's a capacity innate in the human mind, in the human psyche, to also do this, to feel, oh shit, there's this rising kind of energy in Germany or wherever it was, like, oh, people are getting antsy about this, or like there's too much tension in the air. We have all of these international agreements, we got all this stuff. It's all fucking, yeah, maybe you could do that. Maybe you could like is Jung telling the future? Like is he getting like a vision of a future event, i.e. the streets of blood or the rivers of blood or whatever? Or is he like just immediately from the future, just jumping into the future and taking back an idea from 2 years in the future? Or is he actually mapping, is his unconscious mapping all of the steps? Oh, this will lead to that, that'll lead to that. Oh my God, in 2 years it'll probably be blood. Like those are two different mechanisms, right? And so like the
Hmm.
second there I find a lot more plausible than the first. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
But why would he, so in his paradigm of like dreams representing kind of the personal unconscious, why would he be dreaming about like world events anyway? Shouldn't these rivers of blood be like parts of himself or whatever? So because I think that he was playing in this realm, and it comes out a lot in Memories, Dreams, Reflections, that like there's a lot that he was considering and entertaining that didn't make it into theory because it was just too out there, and he did really solid work of grounding
Yeah.
everything that he could in plausible
Yeah.
description. But then he's like, okay, here's the thing about synchronicities. I've noticed that like
Yeah.
up to future generations to prove and define it. And then yeah, he was into some even more mystical shit. Like he believed um that he was that it so anyway, I don't know how much credulity or like how much belief or dogma he applied to this, but if, for him it was a relief when the war broke out because he's like, oh, this isn't my personal psychosis.
I'm
This
just
isn't.
telling the future. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Now I just have that to deal with, which is so much
Yeah.
more
Yeah.
manageable. And he also had enough confidence. You know the story about he's in the room with Freud and they're having this heated debate about some of these kinds of ideas, and
Yes.
then
Synchronicities.
Jung says the synchronicities. Jung says like this big, in a moment there will be something to prove it, and then
Yes. Yeah.
there was this like gunshot kind of sound from the cabinet, and then Freud's like, what? But
Freud
that can just,
shits
I don't know.
himself.
Freud
Yeah. Yeah.
shits
Yeah. Yeah.
himself, and then
I
and then Jung says, and there's going to be another one, and there was another one.
Yeah. I found Jung's analysis of Freud, which I'm sure he could have gone much more into depth of, but his that which was included in Memory Streams Reflections, I find fascinating, very very interesting. The idea
Mm,
that Freud had kind of basically had repressed a natural instinct towards mystical, mythological thinking, and had repressed this in the name of, scientific reductionism or whatever. And then, as a compensation, had basically made a god, a divine force out of sexuality, and submitted it, basically his entire philosophy
Mm.
to the god of sexuality, because for him sexuality then became the container of all of the noumenal. The
Yeah.
entire noumenal realm became encoded into sexuality. It's beautiful, elegant. The explanation makes complete sense. Also devastating to Freud's reputation. It's just great. I really, really liked
That's
it a lot.
that's kind of brutal. That's kind of brutal. And then Freud would say, "Well, you're just sexually repressed, Jung." And then Jung would say, "No, I've got some great things going on."
I promise you, I'm very sexually expressed. Thank you very much. Yes.
Wow.
Um, yeah, it's tough. It's tough. I mean, Jung's trying to do something so tough, because he really is like, he's trying to remain grounded within this Enlightenment scientific tradition, which is, I mean, even now, but especially then, was obviously this thing of great value. Oh my God, strict rational analysis of things, data, reason, the application, the studious and conservative application of reason. Look at what it's given us.
Hmm.
Look at all these inventions. Look at how, and he's located within this tradition, and he's trying to respect this tradition, but then he's also encountered the limits of that tradition and found it necessary to go beyond it and to venture into the occult and alchemy and world religions and indigenous, all this sort of stuff. And yeah, I mean, it's tough. He's really, because he becomes convinced that, like, there's real value in these things. I need to mine the value out of these things. But to do so is kind of ostensibly ridiculous. And yet I need to do
Hmm.
it because I would actually, it seems like I'm betraying the kind of scientific, intellectual spirit or whatever by going into these things. But in fact, if there is value in there, which I think there is, I would actually be betraying the intellectual and academic spirit by not going there. And it would actually be cowardice to just stay here and protect my
Hmm.
reputation. And so, yeah, I mean, what a task to take on
What a
in like the
move. Hmm.
1910 or 1920 or whatever. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But so I mean, I think that task is probably not finished. I think probably there is more progress to be made in integrating value and wisdom from, stuff that looks like woo woo to
Hmm.
a more conventional scientist. But that's no reason not to venture there if there in fact may be wisdom there, and if in fact there may be a form of naivety in this kind of conservative scientism. So
Hmm.
you just have to be,
Yeah.
yeah, willing to. Yeah, it's interesting though. It's tough. It's really
I really
tough.
like your language. I really like your language around tethering, about tethering yourself to be like, okay, cool. I can build the rational foundation up to here, and like I can stand solidly on this, and then venture into, okay, what else might be contributing here? Like, if all of these other possibilities of magics and energies and interpersonal connections and distributed consciousness and the pervasion of consciousness through all things, if those line up in just the right way, what other explanations can we get out of it, and what other possibilities can we get out of it? It's so fun to approach things that way. Yeah, without being without floating off into like, oh, I've heard this one thing and it felt really good to me, and I did this one tantric practice, and now I believe in the ontological reality of the chakras and da 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 da. Or to be like confined to like, no, we can't. No, this is what the literature says. This is what um, yeah, or we're really on that the growing membrane, like the furthest growing edge of like rational knowledge.
Yes, yes, yes,
It's beautiful.
yes. Yeah, and sorry, I just need a drink. My throat has begun to close up somehow. It's become incredibly
Yeah,
dry. I don't
sort
know
that
why.
out.
Oh, some kind of demon attacking me, bro. Let's see if apple juice will solve the problem.
Let's apple juice it.
Mm. Yeah,
Feel it.
I've been
Um,
I've been divulging too much of the deep wisdom of the universe. The demons have come to close my throat to stop me.
You need a throat opening practice. Get that
Did you
chakra
throw it
moving.
open in front of? So,
Yeah, maybe there's good. There might still be more good juice in what we're just discussing, but I did remember where I was going with all that patterning
yes,
stuff.
go,
If you want to circle back to it,
please.
because the thing that fell into place recently is trying to understand what this shit about these energies in the bodies are, and noticing myself opening to more experiences of energy. Energy isn't a language that I've used before. I've kind of rejected its use because it just seems to be used so willy-nilly. It seems to be used so uncaringly by people who are really convinced, and it seems for some of them it seems to really work for them. For some of them it seems like, oh, this is bypassing shadow work or something. But I've met some types who are like really into this energetic world and actually seem to be following it towards more wholeness and beauty and
Mm-hmm,
wisdom, and they're able to navigate by it. Well, I hadn't, or
mm-hmm.
I would have to like translate it into something else, maybe translate into like my somatic language, which is my most body focused like meme structure. So, but recently, because Michelle is into energy, and we're doing sexual energy cultivation and certain practices around feeling and moving energies. Well, now I'm starting to get some experiences, some little glimmers of something happening. And before I'd associated it with somatics. And somatics, I would get energetic events, which are like releases, like an emotional pressure in the chest or a tightening in the throat, a weight on the shoulders. And then and then the release could come as like tingles throughout the body. It could come as like moving that energy like up and out the head or down and through the feet. And it's surprising what that imaginal, um, yeah, it's surprising how your imagination can work with that and actually change the felt sense of being in a body, and probably the state of the body itself. Well, so the thing I was saying before about patterning the subtle, potentially there's like more data coming in and out, is relevant here because in what I'm finding through these practices is that they're giving you the specific physiological things like tightening the perineum, tightening the core, and then imagining energy flowing up to the crown of your head, which is potentially the physiological does that on its own. Potentially the awareness can also change or move something. But either way, what's required in these early stages is to do the thing without it being obvious to you what's happening. Because right now the experience of it is just coming in as noise, and it's not yet patterned with what you're doing. Somebody in the past has been in these really subtle states, and they've been able to tell. They're like, oh, when I do this, then I feel energy moving in this direction, or there's like a quality of energy, or energetic channels, blah, 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 blah. I don't feel any or much of that in my body. But potentially the practice of just like following them, they've defined it, they know where it moves, just like following that with my awareness while doing with practice over time gives me the possibility of tuning into that energy which is already moving. And it didn't exist in my awareness before. And then it goes on from there to further energy work and improvisation in that energetic space. So I'm excited.
Yeah, that's cool.
Excited.
I think there's a lot to it. Excuse me. I was hoping you would speak for another 7 seconds or so I could swallow this. It's all right. I've had trouble doing the like visualize the energy thing,
Hmm.
and I think it may be connected to aphantasia. I think it may be connected
Hmm.
to introverted feeling. But what I've found as I've continued to practice is that um, it seems that if you can get the energy to flow properly in some direction from one chakra to another, whatever, you can sometimes experience kind of these peak excitations where instead of just the energy moving, the energy is actually like exploding in a kind of in a way, in a in a kind of orgasmic
Yeah.
way or whatever. Right? And I can basically intuit. It's so hard to describe. With aphantasia, I can't like imagine things, but I can,
Hmm.
even though I can't see anything, I can nevertheless have some kind of awareness somehow in my subjectivity of like the dimensions of things or where things are in relation to each other. And so I can imagine like a spaceship spinning, and I'm not actually seeing anything, but I am kind of aware that maybe like the front is here and the back is here, and then it's spinning around. And so I'm aware of its nature or its presence or whatever,
I
even though I'm
get
not
you.
seeing it. And so I can flow energy through the body and not really feel the energy and not really be able to imagine the energy. But if I do it
Hmm.
properly, then I actually can stimulate these kind of peak excitations. And then I do feel those peak excitations. So I can kind of feel the energy flow up and then like, oh wow, a thing. But I only feel the thing and not the flow. Which is interesting. Because it seems to indicate that there is actually something happening there. Even though I can actually feel my way through it.
Hmm.
But I'm hoping that if I just
Yeah.
keep doing it, my ability to actually perceive and experience the energy itself flowing will increase.
That's what I think happens.
I believe in it. I believe in the use of the term energy. I think it's the most useful term. I used to couch it in like this sentence of caveats before and after to
Yeah.
distance myself from being it. I know I just don't. I just use the word energy, and we'll argue about it if you want. Because I think it is like the appropriate energy. I think it's the appropriate word to use to describe that. I think that's why they've settled into it. I think the chakra system probably is actually pretty decent. I think probably all those people who invented it and refined it and developed and stuff weren't all just crazy. They were refining something. And I've had some good insights into myself about shadow work because I noticed that I could take my sacral energy and I could pull it down into my root chakra, and then I could kind of flow it
Hmm.
up into my sacral chakra. And so I could kind of move it between the root and the
Ooh.
sacral, but I couldn't get it any higher than that. And then I could also kind of generate like philosophical energy or whatever, some kind of insight energy in kind of my head zone, and I could kind of flow it from like the top of my head down into my like my throat, and then down into like towards like my solar plexus. But then I couldn't. I just so I had access to like this top bit and the bottom bit, but then the connection in between
Mm.
was I had nothing. And so
Mm.
then I looked into that, like what is blocking it? And then I read up about what chakras are there, and then I was like, "Fuck it!" I'm pretty sure this stuff is all actually unconscious to me. These kind of
Mm.
virtues and values and principles and stuff. And so I'm like, "Fuck!" It all actually does make sense. Like that is the
Mm.
area that is probably most undeveloped in me, and that is there for the area that is closed in terms of chakras. That is the area that is blocking the flow of these other areas, which are quite, well integrated or whatever in their local
Hmm.
region. And I'm like, fuck, this makes too much sense for me to just discard this. I looked into it for like a like
Yeah.
a few days to kind of check it out, and I ended up being like, fuck, I actually think there's a lot to this stuff, and so I don't want to go around broadcasting my belief in the chakra system, but I'm pretty amenable to it. I'm quite a fan of it.
Yeah. The good language I was given to this recently was through a very academic, pedantic communicator on Tantra that Helene recommended me. And so he talked about the chakra system as prescriptive and not descriptive. So it's prescriptive, it's prescribed for practice. It's like a way of engaging. I don't think he uses the word imaginal, but he actually might have. He might have been in that cloud of um, ideas. But yeah, it's a way of engaging like in the imaginal that has a, a, a real effect on practice, but it's not descriptive about our organism. It's not descriptive about what's happening like on the physical layer, or even maybe exactly like maybe it's not descriptive of a of spiritual anatomy either.
See, that's where I
Um,
disagree. My sense of it is that it is actually descriptive of some kind of metaphysical reality, because I don't know,
yeah.
like like I've noticed that like when I feel a certain emotion or whatever, I often feel it in the place where the with the associated chakra,
Hmm.
and like I'm pretty sure that these people are refining it over centuries or whatever in order to develop this
Mm,
system.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Indians are very smart, and they invented a bunch of other
This
stuff that
guy.
was cool. So like,
Hmm.
why wouldn't they be refining in some sort of I don't know. I just to me it seems like
This
they
this.
probably are actually mapping some actual metaphysical geometry, whatever the
Mm,
fuck metaphysical geometry means. I don't know because geometry is like a physical concept, but I'm
yeah.
happy enough that I think it is descriptive in some sense.
I think that's the point at which, yeah, like you and this guy's called Dr. Christopher Wallace, and his stuff is interesting. I just listened to um, a an episode that he did, which is like an essay on Kundalini and what Kundalini is in the old literature and such. And it didn't he didn't prescribe practice, but he just, I think his purpose is just to cut through modern Kundalini, what he perceives as bullshit. But I think that you and he likely have similar respect for these people refining these traditions and for them to work. But if I can try to gather his perspective, is he understands like all of these teachings to come in lineages, and in different lineages there will be different variations on what Kundalini is and how you engage with it and what the chakras are and what you do with them. And then he points to in all of these old texts, these are all like Kundalini isn't a thing. It's like a practice. It's a methodology. There are like kind of three different things that you have to do in a sequence, and then suddenly Kundalini happens, right? And then maybe similarly, maybe he would have a similar view with the chakras, though I'm not sure that like he's not trying to prescribe that like these actually exist, but there are certain things that happen which you'll have chakra experiences or chakra movements, openings, energy blockages, undoing and stuff like this. But because the symbols of chakras and nadis and kundalinis and other things like overlap and then sometimes like conflict and contradict, I think that's why he says like these are practice tools rather than something akin to like physiology.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. I think that's probably the best way to market it, because I think what I'm doing is because I'm sufficiently tethered to this kind of like highly rational scientific world, I trust
Hmm.
myself to venture out into
Yeah,
saying something like I think it's descriptive of metaphysical geometry. I think if you're maybe trying
yeah,
to run a business, it's better maybe not to lead with that.
yeah. Fair enough.
Or
He's
no, sorry, no,
and
that's overly cynical. What I mean to say is, if your home base is actually to be existing within that world, then it's responsible to be trying to stretch back towards the rational and try to not try to overestimate how woo-woo things are. But because my home base
mhm.
is the rational, I feel more comfortable stretching into the. I don't know. I don't know this guy at all. Maybe I just shouldn't be commenting.
No. Fair enough. And I think I err towards your positioning of like what the chakras and such are in some a defined field of like, no, yeah, there's reality to these things. There's an existence to these things. Metaphysical geometry. Yeah, that's a great term for what we haven't yet um like created a category for. But yeah, there's like these things in some way are real and not just mnemonics for practice. That's my feeling.
Yeah,
And then
yeah.
yeah, and having listened to that one podcast where he just like briefly went into that idea, I'm not an expert on his thinking, but it's quite a good. I've gotten some practices out of his work that I've really enjoyed as well. Um, energy
Can I
stuff. So
share?
I'd recommend it. Tell
Can I
me.
share something with you? Sorry, I
Yeah.
was a little distracted when I was responding to that because something you said reminded me. I saw a very funny thumbnail the other day and I thought of a great joke. Well, I didn't think of a great joke. I couldn't think of a good joke, but I felt like this could be made into a good joke. And then talking about Kundalini has brought me one step closer to working out how to make a good joke out of this. Can you see my screen?
It's coming up now. Yeah, I can see it. Snakes are deeper than you could possibly imagine.
Yeah, I saw this thumbnail. I just thought, I just thought it'd be very, very funny to imagine Jordan Peterson like fucking a snake, and just like completely fucking up, and then like coming back to, he's giving one of his lectures, he's passing on wisdom. He's like, don't try it, don't fuck snakes. They are deeper than you can possibly imagine.
Oh, that's awful.
The thumbnail is just this
And
gaping
they've
maw.
got fangs.
Yeah, I know, right? It would be such a terrible blunder. Oh my God,
For
I
anyone
complete,
who's listening,
I've
you should
completely
understand that
misunderstood.
Mars has the deepest respect for Jordan Peterson, and this
I
was not
do.
a dig at Jordan Peterson.
No. But yeah, the idea of him like really badly misunderstanding Kundalini and then be like, oh, Kundalini's when you fuck snakes, right? And just fucking ruining his life.
Oh no, you could make like a really good meme out of that very few niche practitioners would
Right,
understand.
exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. Oh man. Oof. It's really the descent. I'm feeling like 2.5 hours is a good checkpoint to pause
Yeah.
this
Okay, yeah.
recording.
It's been a
Okay.
fun chat.
Yeah. I'll just stop this in a second, but goodbye anybody who's stumbled upon this. Thank you for coming along the journey with us.